Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the 2024 edition of the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. Yes, it's a weird name for a tournament, but basically what ended up happening was AT&T dropped their sponsorship from the tournament formerly known as the Byron Nelson, and CJ, which is normally the sponsor of the CJ Cup, which has been played in the fall swing on the PGA Tour, decided that they would go ahead and jump on the opportunity to sponsor this event. So this is now the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, and I don't know why they chose to name it that way, but it is what it is. Anyway, the PGA Tour is heading to McKinney, Texas this week outside of Dallas, and we're going to break down this event, the course that is being played, TPC Craig Ranch, and we're going to take a look at the field and tell you who you need to be picking if you are playing DFS this week, or if you are making outright bets, or if you are playing one and done this week. We're going to break everything down for you and tell you what you need no matter what type of game you are playing for the CJ Cup Byron Nelson this week. And I got to say, TPC Craig Ranch kind of gets a bad rap. Like there's a lot of people in the content industry that are talking bad about it, speaking down on it. But, as somebody who was born in the Dallas area, like it's not a visually unappealing golf course. I think that there is a very clear strategy here. And I don't think that it's one of the worst golf courses on the PGA Tour, like some people would have it out to be described. But I do think that it is one this week that, as somebody who is trying to play DFS or betting, there is a very clear path to victory. There's a very clear goal in mind. There's a very clear question that this golf course is asking. So I do think that this should be a slightly more predictable event from what we're looking at in terms of a course perspective. But with it being a fairly weak field, there's a lot of question marks from the field perspective. So we're going to break down both those things on this episode, what you need to know about this golf course, as well as you need to know about who's playing this golf course in order to make the best picks possible this week. And, it does feel good, even though this might be perceived as a crappy tournament. It does feel good to be back with a regular stroke play event on the PGA Tour after having the team event last week. The team event, it's kind of kooky, it's quirky, it's weird, but it's kind of fun for a week. And then now we're back to individual stroke play, which I kind of prefer a little bit better. So, it is back to have a nice little normal week this week, but next week and the week after is when it really starts ramping up on the PGA Tour. We have got the signature event at Quail Hollow, the Wells Fargo Championship next week, as well as the major, the PGA Championship coming up in 2 weeks. And we're going to be here for all of that, as well as the rest of the PGA Tour season. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you have not done so already, please hit the like button on the video on YouTube, and please rate and review if you're listening on audio. It helps me out a ton. I really do appreciate when you guys do that. It helps the videos get noticed, helps the podcast get noticed. And if you like the content that you've seen here on Mike's Money Picks, it really does help me out a ton if you guys could hit that like button and rate and review for me. All right, so that does it for the introduction. So let's go ahead now and dive into the course and take a look at what TPC Craig Ranch has to offer. All right, so taking a look at TPC Craig Ranch, it is taking place in McKinney, Texas, which is a suburb that is a little bit north of Dallas, Texas. And so that's why you see a lot of traditionally like Texas guys or guys who are native to the Dallas area playing this event, just because it's a generally really easy one to play for them. Now, a guy who normally tees it up in this event but is not this week is Scotty Scheffler, because if you have not heard, his baby is actually very close to being born. They may have had the baby already. I don't know if they're going to, make that public or not. But, Scotty Scheffler normally plays in this event because he is a Dallas guy. He is skipping this week. So you do see the other two big Dallas guys, Jordan Spieth and Will Zalatoris, teeing it up this week, as well as Tom Kim, who is kind of like a new Dallas guy, as that's where he's made his residence in America. Anyway, TPC Craig Ranch has hosted this event for the last 3 years, 2021, 2022, and 2023. The previous course that hosted this event, Trinity Forest, is nothing like this one. Trinity Forest was basically built on a former landfill in the Dallas area and was turned into like a links golf course, which was, made to play like a course in the British Isles, even though it was in Dallas, Texas, which was really cool, really unique, but definitely not very much of a corollary to this event. So do not look at any of the results of the Byron Nelson tournament from before 2021 if you're looking to get a little bit of a tell as to who might play well here this week. This course has hosted this event 3 times, and it's only been won by 2 golfers. K.H. Lee won the first 2 editions in 2021 and 2022, with Jason Day winning last year in 2023. And the winning scores have been quite low, -26, -25, -23. This is an absolute birdie fest. Even last year when it technically played the hardest at -23. It was a par 71 last year. They took a par 5 and changed it to a par 4 without really making it any shorter. So, the course should have played 4 strokes lower, and it only played 3 strokes lower from where it was at the all-time low. So this is definitely an event where scoring is going to be in play. But the path to victory here is quite simple. There is very minimal danger off the tee here at TPC Craig Ranch. Water is technically in play on over half the holes, but you'd have to hit it pretty far out or like just absolutely top it off the tee to end up in a lot of this water. It's not really in play all that much, and the rough itself here at TPC Craig Ranch is not very penal. So you're looking at wide fairways with low amount of rough, not a whole lot of water hazards that are in play. There's just not a whole lot of danger off the tee, and there is not going to be a whole lot preventing guys from swinging driver on every par 4 and par 5 this week. In fact, that's probably what they're going to be doing. The fairway bunkers are really the main hazard at this course, and those can be quite deep. They can be a pain to get out of, but if you're a smart golfer and you know where they are and you play away from them, then they really shouldn't affect you all that much here this week at TPC Craig Ranch. The greens themselves do not pose much of a challenge either. They're very big, they're very flat, and they are bent grass. And so with there being very wide fairways and very big greens, you are going to see a huge amount of greens in regulation this week, much higher than what we've seen on the PGA Tour in recent weeks. And so what it's going to come down to, if everybody is hitting greens, is how close can you get it to the flag and can you make the putts? And like we said, this is going to be bent grass greens this week. Make sure you take note of that, because this is really the first in a long line of bent grass events that you're going to see on the PGA Tour. Pretty much as we end up in late spring to summer, most of the events that you're going to see are on bent grass. Pretty much the ones that are not in the southeastern or northeastern United States are going to be on bent grass. Now, what is interesting also about how this course shakes out on the scorecard is the par 3s are very long, and the par 5s are very reachable in 2, and the par 4s, there are 2 that are nearly drivable, but the rest are very long. So when you have a long dispersion of par 3s, a set of reachable par 5s and long par 4s, you're going to end up with a bunch of long approach shots. And so more than anything this week here at TPC Craig Ranch, my priority is going to be, I want to play guys in my DFS lineups and bet on guys, play guys in one and done that are great long iron players, because that is going to be the separator this week. You're going to have a lot of long irons from the fairway into a big green, and can you get that long iron to sit close to the flag, and can you make the putt for birdie, because it's going to take a lot of birdies to win this week. Now, looking at the key stats, which we have talked about for every course on the PGA Tour this season, here this week at TPC Craig Ranch, my key stats are strokes gained approach. It's a key stat pretty much every week. But following that is opportunities gained, meaning how many times does a guy give themselves a makeable birdie putt, because you're going to need to make a lot of birdie putts this week. And how many times do they do that relative to the rest of the field? That's where the gain comes in. Birdie or better percentage or birdie or better percentage gain is also another one, because that's going to measure whether or not they cashed in on that birdie putt that they gave themselves. And then I also want to look at proximity from 200 yards plus, because that's where a lot of the approaches are going to come from this week. And then I want to look at strokes gained putting on bent grass. Now, this course does have a lot of decent, comp courses to it, with it only being a 3-year sample size here at TPC Craig Ranch. I would not be too eager to look at just pure course history, but I do think you can get a lot from comp course history. And I think that with these comp courses, you can really kind of build a profile for what type of golfers or what archetype of golfer should play well here this week. And it's going to be, courses that also prioritize a lot of long approach shots and also yield a lot of birdies. So on my course list, you've got Vedanta Vallarta, you've got Detroit Golf Club, and you've got, I think you could even include the Shriners Open TPC Summerlin. I think you could even include the John Deere Classic in that, just for being, bent grass birdie fests. But also, I think that you can include some Texas courses as well, like Memorial Park and TPC San Antonio, which also feature a ton of long approach shots, even though those feature a different, grass surface on the greens. But Colonial Country Club is another one in Texas that is very similar agronomy. It's bent grass greens. It's a lot more difficult, but I do think that agronomy does kind of play into a little bit. So pretty much with those 2 archetypes of courses, I'm looking at birdie fests that are long courses. I'm looking at Texas courses. And then I also think TPC Scottsdale is a pretty good comp course as well. There's a lot of crossover success from this course and that one. Jason Day has generally played well at Scottsdale throughout his career. KH Lee, who has won this event twice, plays very well at TPC Scottsdale. Jordan Spieth has played well at both courses. So I do think that there's enough crossover success there, along with it being another Tom Weisskopf design like TPC Craig Ranch is, that I do think I would include TPC Scottsdale as a comp course. Now, in terms of course history here at this event, There are quite a few guys who have been pretty good here at, TPC Craig Ranch. There's been, let's say, 8 golfers who have played this event all 3 times. KH Lee has obviously been the best out of all of those with 2 wins in the T50. But what's interesting about KH Lee, though, is pretty much the only thing that separated his 2 wins from his T50 was his putter. When he was hot with the putter, he won. When he lost 5 strokes with the putter, he came in T50. His ball striking was pretty much the same about. So pretty much this week, no matter who you pick, no matter, what you're looking for in a golfer, if they are poor with the putter, it's not going to be a good week. If they have a spike week putting, they're going to give themselves a chance to win. Now, Ryan Palmer, noted Texas guy, has also played this event 3 times, and he is the only one, aside from KH Lee, who has put up 2 top 10 finishes in all 3 tries with a T47, a T5, and a T8. Seamus Power is the only one out of anybody who has put up 3 straight top 20 finishes, T9, T17, T19. Other guys who have really, really good finishes here, Daniel Berger finished T3 here back in 2021. Jordan Spieth, it took last year off, but has finished 9th and 2nd in 2 tries. CT Pan finished 4th last year. Marty Doe finished 5th last year. Vincent Norman finished 8th last year. And then you start looking at a bunch of guys who have played either multiple times or not really had all that much success. Another interesting one, notable one in my opinion, Alex Noren has finished T21 and T12 in the 2 times that he has teed it up here at TPC Craig Ranch. All right, so that is enough about TPC Craig Ranch. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we are going to dive down the rabbit hole. All right, if you've been with us for a few weeks now, you know that when I say dive down a rabbit hole, I don't mean a literal rabbit hole, but I mean BetSperts Golf's tool known as the rabbit hole, where you can customize pretty much any condition, filter, course, like whatever you need in terms of like trying to identify skill sets in golfers who play well in certain conditions. The rabbit hole has that condition that you can filter by. And I cannot speak enough to how much this tool has helped me this year find some guys that I probably would not have otherwise if I didn't have this tool to be able to filter out different specific stats. I absolutely love this tool with the rabbit hole, and I would highly recommend if you are somebody who enjoys making a custom model or enjoys looking at golf stats as much as I do, then the rabbit hole is a great place to go. Now, one thing that I'm going to be doing with my custom model this week on the rabbit hole is I'm going to be pretty much double dipping a lot of stats with, everything and then just everything in easy scoring conditions, because this week is going to be easy scoring conditions. And so I want to know who's going to play well in those conditions, right? Now, for a lot of what we're going to go over on this video is just going to be overlaid with what guys have done in general. So the best players in the field in terms of strokes gained total in the calendar year 2024. I think that's just giving us a good general baseline as to who's playing good golf this year and who has a high ceiling in terms of being able to play well here at this event. And the top 10 is Alex Noren, Siwoo Kim, Tom Hoge, Keith Mitchell, Maverick McNeely, Adam Scott, Peter Quest, Doug Yim, Mark Hubbard, and Steven Yeager. If we were to make that just approach play, which I think is the most important stat this week in general, you've got Tom Hoge, Keith Mitchell, Jake Knapp, Will Zalatoris, Andrew Novak, Ryan Moore, Joel Damon, Mark Hubbard, Grayson Sigg, and Siwoo Kim. Now, I also want to be able to know who is going to make birdies this week. So if you just look in general at birdie or better percentage, the top 10 guys in the field have been Wesley Bryan on a small sample size, then Jordan Spieth, then Kelly Kraft on a small sample size, followed by Peter Quest, Ben Ahn, Taylor Pendrith, Mark Hubbard, Tom Hoge, Camilo Villegas, and Thomas Dietrich in the top 10 there. And now, what if I also go with par 5 scoring? Because I do think that's going to be important this week. You're going to have to score in these 3 par 5s. They're very easy holes. Top 10 in that list is going to be Marty Doe, Taiga Semikawa, Kevin Tway, Alex Noren, Will Zalatoris, Sean O'Hare, Bo Hostler, Mackenzie Hughes, Steven Yeager, and Norman Zhang. Now, also, the rabbit hole does not have opportunities gained, but one thing they do have is overall proximity, meaning how close to the hole are they putting the ball. And the guys in the top 10 in this stat are Jimmy Walker, Kelly Kraft, Jake Knapp, Wesley Bryan, Stuart Sink, Austin Smotherman, Luke List, Bryce Garnett, Joel Damon, and Tom Hoge. That is quite the motley crew of a list there for that stat, but that does give us a general idea as to who is pin hunting out there in the calendar year 2024. And then I do also want to look at from the fairway, who is the best in long approach shots 200 plus yards out. And those guys have been Robert McIntyre, Paul Barjon, Jimmy Walker, Patrick Fishburne, Austin Smotherman, Kevin Yu, Kevin Doherty, Thorbjorn Olesen, Tom Hoagie, and Cody Gribble. Again, that's quite the motley crew of a list. But these are the guys who've been playing a lot of these resort course type events like Puerto Rico and Corrales Punta Cana, where they've had plenty of opportunities to get that 200 plus number because those feature a lot of long golf holes. Now, also, let's go back to just general stroke gain total, and let me actually do the easy filter so we can just kind of get a general baseline of who plays well in general when scoring conditions are easy. So in this field, this year, the top players in easy scoring conditions have been Ben Griffin, Jimmy Stanger, Keith Mitchell, Jordan Spieth, Steven Yeager, Hayden Springer, Carson Young, Taylor Montgomery, Doug Gim, and Chan Kim. Ironically enough, Gim and Kim teammates last week at the Zurich Classic, coming up 9th and 10th here at this easy scoring conditions filter. All right. Now, let's go ahead and switch it around just a little bit. Let's go ahead and kind of go like a quick tee to green tour of what you're going to need to see in the most important stats this week. So for what I did was I went ahead and filtered courses where driver is used quite heavily and there is not a lot of penalty for missing the fairway. And the top 10 guys off the tee in those conditions have been Cam Champ, Davis Thompson, Peter Quest, Keith Mitchell, Chris Gotterup, Garrick Higo, Will Zalatoris, Luke List, Jimmy Stanger, and Joseph Bramlett. So those are kind of our mad bombers who are able to take advantage of, courses that are generous off the tee, right? Now, if we were to also now just look at approach shots from long courses, because those generally feature the most long approach shots, right? The top 10 in the field, and I think this is probably the most important stat that I've looked at yet. The top 10 in the field in this category have been Tom Hoagie, Mark Hubbard, Jake Knapp, Martin Laird, Sam Ryder, Steven Yeager, Nate Lashley, Siwoo Kim, Kevin Yu, and JJ Spawn. Now, if we were to go to the next stat, which is going to be putting on bent grass greens, the best bent grass putters in the last 2 years, because you got to keep in mind there haven't been a whole lot of events on bent recently here this year. The best in the field have been Maverick McNeely, Callum Tarrant, Aaron Baddeley, Chad Ramey, Harry Hall, Peter Quest, Justin Suh, Bo Hostler, Chesson Hadley, and Ryan Moore. And then now let's start talking about comp courses. So if you just look at the list of my comp courses, who have been the best guys here in the last 2 years? Tom Kim, Steven Yeager, Jason Day, Jordan Spieth, Jake Knapp, Taylor Pendrith, Brandon Wu, Adam Schenk, Siwoo Kim, and Sung J M. And then lastly, who generally plays well in the state of Texas? And that list is Alex Noren, Jordan Spieth, Siwoo Kim, Matt Kuchar, Jason Day, Adam Scott, Steven Yeager, Mackenzie Hughes, Samuel Stevens, and Aaron Rye. Throw all that into a custom model, and this ended up being one of the funkiest models that I have gotten in the time that I've been doing this. Like most of the time when you do a model, like especially if he's in the field, Scotty Scheffler's number one. If not, it generally is like one of the highest priced golfers on DraftKings that ends up being number one. Well, this week, drum roll please, number one is Tom Hoagie. I was kind of surprised to see that, but not really, considering he has been the best player in the field in approach in the calendar year 2024, and that was what I put a lot of stress on. So, the stat that you prioritize is going to be the guy that you get out, right? So Tom Hoagie ends up being number one. Interestingly enough, number two is Chan Kim. He popped up well on a lot of the easy course metrics, which I think allowed him to elevate all the way to number two, followed by Alex Noren, Mark Hubbard, Adam Scott, Aaron Rye, Tom Kim, Jordan Spieth, Justin Lauer, and Adam Schenk as my top 10. A guy that I really liked coming into the week, Steven Yeager, was number 13. Another guy that popped up on a lot of those stats, Keith Mitchell, as well as Peter Quest. They were 14 and 15. Will Zalatoris popped in at 20, and Jason Day popped in at 22, meaning those two guys significantly underperformed their price tags as being two of the highest priced DraftKings golfers in the field. Now, if you want to know, the model is something that I tinker with kind of like as the week goes by. I do like 3 or 4 versions of it. So if you want to know who ends up making the final top 10 of my final model, head on over to my Patreon, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks. On that Patreon, I will post an article for every PGA Tour event where I, have a full write-up as well as my core DFS plays for that event, as well as the final top 10 from the model. So if you want to know how that shakes out for this event and every other PGA Tour event this season, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks is the place to go. All right, so now let's take a quick breather, and then we're going to take a look at the board and see if we can identify who we like here this week at the Byron Nelson. So I'm going to be honest. I cannot recall an event where there is as much name recognition at the top of the board, but there's as much question marks around where their game is currently at and how they fit the course than what the top of the board looks like this week. So at the DraftKings board, as well as the odds boards on pretty much any site you can bet on. The three names at the top are Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, and Will Zalatoris. But like I said, they all come with major question marks. Right now, Jordan Spieth is a guy who we think of as being this, a guy who can get, scorching hot on approach, can get scorching hot with the putter, and is generally a great par saver around the greens, right? Like that's generally our impression of Jordan Spieth. Well, he's shown the ability to spike on approach and spike with the putter in recent months, but his around the green play has been quite awful. And really with Spieth, that's kind of what he normally hangs his hat on. In two courses that he generally has played well in his career, Augusta National and Harbour Town, he has not played well at in his last two starts. So I think there's major concern around Jordan Spieth. Now, the reason that you maybe, might look past those concerns is his history at this event. He's played it twice at this course and finished 9th and 2nd, gaining strokes in all categories both times, including being red hot on approach and just being barely above neutral with the putter. So I do think there is an argument to be made for playing Jordan Spieth this week in DFS or betting him to win. But man, there's definitely some concern about that recent around the green play and how inconsistent he's been on approach and on the tee. Jason Day pretty much was a guy that last year, like if anybody says that last year nobody saw Jason Day's win coming, they're lying, because we were all over Jason Day last year when he won this event. Pretty much he'd been trending in the right direction all year long. He generally was, from his prime to now, still a very good putter of the golf ball. And he had been trending in the right direction on approach, off the tee, and around the green, and finally brought it all together at the Byron Nelson for his first win in, I believe it was like 4 years. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it was 4 years. But since then, he just hasn't really been the same player. He started off this calendar year hot with a T6 at the Pebble Beach and then a 9th place finish at the Genesis. But he has lost strokes or been neutral on approach in pretty much every start since, even though the putter has been great for him. So that's definitely a profile that's a little bit concerning. And, last year he was red hot on approach at this event. He's going to need to find that red hot approach play if he wants to win here again this week. And he just hasn't shown that this calendar year. Will Zalatoris, I just think, is objectively a bad course fit. Like Will Zalatoris is a guy that we think of as playing well at major championships, at events where par is a good score, at holes where, guys that are going to be just thankful to save par, he's able to make birdies on difficult golf holes, long par fours, difficult par fives, difficult par threes. Like that's kind of his jam, right? Birdie fests are not, because he's generally just a terrible putter. In fact, only one time in his career has Will Zalatoris ever finished below -16 on the PGA Tour, and it was at the Century Tournament of Champions over a year ago, and that's also like a straight birdie fest. So pretty much he just does not have a track record of performing well in this type of event. At the 2021 Byron Nelson, he played well, finishing T17, was outstanding on approach, gaining about 9 shots for the tournament, but gave 5 of it back with the putter. And so, if he's able to bring that approach play back and just be neutral with the putter, he definitely can give himself a shot this week. But I just am generally concerned about the fact that we've never seen him play well at this type of event. So if everybody is going to be fading the top of the board, what I think that's going to end up creating is kind of like a little bit of homogeneity among the lineups here, where everybody is going to be playing multiple guys in the 9K range in DFS. And I think that a lot of the guys in the 9K range make for just as much sensible bets as the guys at the very top of the board, just because there's not as many red flags, but there's not as much name recognition. So you're getting guys who, in all honesty, have about the same win equity as the guys at the top of the board, but at better odds, right? So why not take advantage of that? So the 9K range has a lot of guys that people are going to like. One of my favorites is Siwoo Kim. So Siwoo Kim has been pretty much elite on approach in the calendar year 2024. The only start that he lost strokes on approach was at the Masters, and that was really just because of a few bad shots. But other than that, he has been just like all systems go on approach all year long, and he's also been gaining strokes off the tee all year long. That is what we'd like to see, and that is the profile of somebody who is eventually going to break through for a win, which, oh, by the way, he almost did at this course last year when he finished second. So I really like how everything shapes up for Siwoo Kim this week. He is my favorite play in the 9K range. Now, another one of my favorite plays in the 9K range is Steven Yeager. He already has a win on the PGA Tour this season with his win at the Houston Open, which I do think is a decent comp course for this one. I'm willing to forgive the missed cut at the Masters because he got caught in a terrible weather wave, and it was also his first time playing the course, and he just very clearly was not very accustomed to it. But other than that, in the calendar year 2024, he has been just red hot on approach, better at approach shots with long courses, and he's also shown the ability to spike with the putter, right? Last year, you look at some of the events that he played the best at, and even back further in his career, he plays well at these bent grass birdie fest type of events, right? Last year, T9 at Rocky Mortgage, T13 at the John Deere, T14 at the Wyndham, which I know is Bermuda grass on the greens, but that's still another very easy course. And he's also played well at these long iron courses like this year, T3 at the Farmers, T3 at Mexico, win at the Houston Open. He just checks a ton of boxes. And oh, by the way, he finished 11th here last year, losing strokes on approach, which is not normally his MO. So Steven Yeager is absolutely one of my favorite plays here this week. And then we've already mentioned, from the model, Tom Hoge is another one of my favorite plays here in the 9K range, just because, he's been absolutely elite on fire on approach play this calendar year. And that's generally the profile of somebody who's eventually going to win a golf tournament as well. And so, for the other plays in the 9K range, I don't think you can really go wrong. I think they're all going to get a lot of ownership in DFS, honestly. I think that Minwoo Lee is very intriguing. I think he's probably the most volatile play. He is a guy who just bombs it off the tee. He's won in Birdie Fest on the DP World Tour. I just think that he's too talented to not keep winning on the PGA Tour. So I think he's eventually going to break through for a win. And then Tom Kim at even 9K, I was surprised to see him as far down in the pricing as he was ever since he got scorching hot on Sunday at the Masters and played really well at the RBC Heritage. He's a Dallas native now, so he should be pretty familiar with this type of golf course. And also, he's a guy that excels at approach shots of a lot of long distances. So definitely, I think everything is shaping up well for Tom Kim. And what I think you're going to see a lot of this week on DraftKings is people ignoring the top of the board and playing multiple guys here in this 9K range. So if you want to play multiple guys in this 9K range, which, like I said, I think there's a ton of great options, it's going to be wise to get different with your lineup somewhere else. So how exactly can we do that? Well, let's take a quick breather, and then we're going to take a look at some of our favorite value plays here this week. All right, so with this type of golf course and this quality of field, I do want to go ahead and mention kind of like a little bit of betting strategy. So in all honesty, I think that what I'm going to do a lot of this week, I don't think I'm going to have a whole lot of outright bets this week. I just think that this, type of tournament is very hard to predict who's actually going to win. What I would rather do is kind of look further down the board and throw together a few top fives or top 10s that I like, or maybe even throw together a top 20 or top 10 parlay with guys near the top of the board. That's probably going to be what I'm going to do this week. But I find this week as being one where it's going to be really hard to identify a winner because there are truly numerous guys who can actually win this tournament. In fact, looking back at last week, it's kind of the same strategy that I had. I did not have an outright ticket on Rory and Lowry, but I had numerous top 20 parlays. Unfortunately, a lot of them had Zalatoris and Theegala in it, so they did not hit. But I did have a top 20 bet on Charlie Hoffman and Nick Watney, which paid for the entire week because there was such good odds on that. So I think I might do the same thing this week and try to find some guys near the bottom of the board that might be good bets for top 10s or top 20s that are going to give me good odds on that and decent amount of return. So anyway, looking at it from a DraftKings perspective, with everybody looking to the 9K range, I think that you're going to see a lot of forgotten guys in the 8Ks and in the mid 7Ks. So what I mean by that is I think that Keith Mitchell will be quite popular. He showed up on a lot of stuff when we did the custom model. He's really ball striking it well right now. Really playing some good golf. I do like me some Keith Mitchell this week. I do really like Adam Schenk this week as well. When you think of bent grass birdie fests, Adam Schenk is kind of one of the first names that comes to my mind as guys who play well at that type of environment. And he's also coming in on some really good performances, 5th at the Valero, 12th at the Masters coming in. So Adam Schenk playing good golf at a type of course environment that fits him. And then, oh, by the way, you have the guy who's won this event twice in KH Lee, a guy who is significantly more talented than his price tag in Maverick McNeely. You've got a lot of guys that are interesting here in the 8K range, but I think that those guys in the 9K range are going to get more ownership. What I think also is I always try to identify the hard cliff on DraftKings. Where does it just fall off in terms of quality of golfer, right? And this week, I think the hard cliff is Seamus Power. because above him, you've got Davis Thompson, who's, kind of like Keith Mitchell light, just really good ball striking, kind of knocking on the door. And then you've got Jake Knapp, who's been really good at these long, approach type golf courses, definitely better at golf courses where you can spray it off the tee, right above Seamus Power, who's had 3 straight top 20s in this event. So below Seamus Power, up until about the 7,500 range, more on those guys in a minute, I think you're going to have a lot of guys who go under-owned, but Beau Hossler is a prolific birdie maker who has played his college golf in Texas. I don't mind going with Beau Hossler this week. Luke List has also had more success in his PGA Tour career on long golf courses, which this is this week. Don't mind going with him. Doug Yim has been great on approach in the calendar year 2024, also played his college golf at the University of Texas, so I don't mind going with him either. Ryan Fox is a mad bomber, and anecdotally, we've seen here in these courses in the Dallas area, we've seen South Koreans and Australians play really well for whatever reason. And Ryan Fox is from New Zealand, so he may not be an Aussie, but he is a Kiwi, so maybe that might bode well for him. But, sitting there at 7,600, I don't think he's going to be very highly owned. And then you've got Chen Kim, who popped up very well in my models, playing some really good golf, who I don't think is going to be very highly owned. And why do I think that? Well, I mentioned, my perceived popularity of the 9K range on DraftKings, but also I think there's going to be a lot of popularity for the price tag of exactly $7,500. If you're listening to any other content creators this week, they probably mentioned Peter Quest. And that's because he has a track record of performing well in these Birdie Fest type events. He was 14th here last year. He had a top 10 at the Rocket Mortgage last summer as well. And he's also coming off of 2 straight top 10 finishes, one at the Valero and one at Corrales, which are for different reasons decent corollary courses to this one. He's one of the longest hitters off the tee on the PGA Tour. He can get scorching hot with the putter, particularly on bent grass. He's the type of guy, young up and coming, that, kind of fits the bill for like a long shot type winner. And he's sitting there at $7,500, and everybody and their brother hyping him up this week. Do I think he is objectively a good play this week? Yes. Do I think he's going to be super popular on DraftKings this week? Yes. So how might I get some action on Peter Quest this week? I think he's a great top 10 bet. I think he's a great top 20 bet. I think he's a great showdown DFS play, but I think he's going to be supremely popular in week-long DFS. So just keep that in mind when you're building your lineups. Sam Stevens is a guy who, for whatever reason, plays his best golf in the state of Texas. And guess where this event is? The state of Texas. So I definitely wouldn't mind going with him, but I also think he's going to be chalk for that reason as well. And then I also think Justin Lauer is going to be pretty chalky. Coming off of a 4th place finish at Corrales, he also finished 3rd at Mexico this year. This is a guy who is one of the best putters of the golf ball on the PGA Tour. So why not play a guy who's got a really discernible skill, who's going to put it into use this week, and just hope that he can stick his approaches close enough that he can give himself enough makeable birdie putts that he can make to roll it in. It's kind of the same argument I make for playing Denny McCarthy a lot. Justin Lauer is kind of becoming the light version of that. So if those guys are going to be chalk, who can you pivot off of to it? Well, Andrew Novak has been great on approach in the calendar year 2024. Nate Lashley really showed up on my model really well. What's interesting about Lashley is he either makes the cut and plays incredibly well, or misses the cut entirely. So I think he's a great boomer bust DFS option, but he's a guy who's generally good at long approach shots. He's also won the Rocket Mortgage, which is, a corollary event to this one. So I do like Nate Lashley sitting there at 7,300. I also always like playing Garrick Higo at courses where he can be wild off the tee. And last time I checked, this is a course where you can be wild off the tee. Played very well with Ryan Fox in the Zurich Classic. So I do think that bodes well again for Garrick Higo this week. Just, the type of courses that he vibes at, this is definitely one of them. Taylor Montgomery anecdotally won a Korn Ferry Tour event here at this course. He's been playing quite poorly recently, but, if you think that course history matters, he would be a guy that you could go with for that. And then Chad Ramey is another guy that I play probably more than I should, but it paid off last week at the Zurich Classic, and I think he was kind of the guy who carried that team over Martin Trainer. But he's a guy who plays his best at courses that feature a lot of long approach shots. T17 at the Houston Open this week, T33 at Vedanta Vallarta earlier in the year, if you need evidence of that. Another guy who I think is going to be chalky in DraftKings, but for good reason, is Matty Schmid. He's just kind of been knocking on the door for quite a while now, put together a lot of finishes in the teens and 20s in the calendar year, kind of like Tom Hoagie light. He's been great on approach. He can also get hot with the putter. So I definitely could see a lot of people playing Matty Schmid at $7,200 this week. So if he's going to be the chalk, who could you pivot off of? Well, Ryan Palmer, pretty much Ryan Palmer in the state of Texas. You just play him. Just no questions asked. Just play him in the state of Texas. He was in contention here at this event last year. He is not playing great golf recently, but I'm just willing to trust that, he generally gets it figured out in the state of Texas, and I don't see any reason why this would be any different. Now, looking way down the board, I do think there are a few compelling value plays this week. Jimmy Stanger is an elite driver of the golf ball, and that's a skill that can put him at a little bit of an advantage this week. Chandler Phillips has been really good on approach in the recent months, and I definitely would not mind going with him. But also, really, when you get further down the board, you start getting a little bit more dicey, but like more upside as well, right? Cameron Champ is kind of like Garrick Higo in that I like playing him at courses where he can be wild off the tee, because if he has that driver in his hand, he's very long with it. He's also really good with his long irons. So I definitely think this is not a bad spot to roll out Cameron Champ. Looking at it also, Joel Damon, Dylan Wu, and Rico Hoey have all been really good in the ball striking categories, and I'm kind of willing to roll the dice on all three of them at $6,700 this week. One guy that I have not heard a whole lot of people mention this week is Taiga Semikawa, whose name kind of sounds like half of Colin Morikawa. He's coming off of a top 25 finish at the ISPS Handa, which is actually a decent field on the DP World Tour last week. He hasn't played a whole lot on the PGA Tour, but he's made 4 out of 5 cuts this year, and I don't know, maybe he's just more talented than all the golfers priced around him. And if you're playing on the DP World Tour, you're probably used to this birdie fest type of event, so I would not mind going with him. Another guy that I like looking way down the board is Marty Doe, aka Zaiching Doe. He is a Dallas native who finished 5th at this tournament last year, and just watching this guy, right? I play him a lot because what he tends to do, he tends to be a pin hunter. He is super aggressive in his course management. He will fire away at pins to try to give himself tap in birdies as much as he can. And at a course like TPC Craig Ranch, where the pin locations aren't too dastardly, there's not a whole lot of trouble you can get in. That's kind of the type of course I like this guy at. And he's also a Dallas native That's checking a few boxes for me. And so I'm definitely going to be rolling out Marty Doe a little bit here this week. Like I said earlier, what I think is going to be the chalky build is going to be a few guys in the 9K range, right? And so if you're playing those guys in the 9K range, you're probably not going to be dipping down all the way here to the low 6Ks to play one of the last guys in your lineup. So I definitely think that this is a way you can get different from a lot of the field, is by playing some of the guys down here priced very far down. Now, anecdotally, I think there is another guy you can play all the way down here, and that is Sung Kang. He is a member at TPC Craig Ranch. In fact, let me look up and see how he has played here in all 3 editions. So he is a member at this golf course, and he doesn't have a whole lot of measured rounds recently on the PGA Tour or the Korn Ferry Tour, but pretty much 2 out of 3 times, if you played him here, he would have definitely paid off his price tag. He was T47 in the first edition at TPC Craig Ranch, missed the cut in 2022, but T14 last year. So he's a guy that I definitely wouldn't be minded to throw a dart at, at the very bottom of my lineup, or just a Hail Mary top 10 or top 20 bet for a guy like him who clearly knows this golf course and has a history of playing decently. All right, so that does it for the value plays. So let's now talk about one and done, and let's close this. All right, so it continues to be kind of a rough year in one and done for me. I'm not going to lie. Last year, I really ran well. I got a few winners. This year, I haven't really had one yet, and it's just been kind of tough sledding. But the good news is we still got a lot of season left to go. We got a lot of elevated events and majors left. We got plenty of time to make up some ground. And this is not going to be a week where we can make up a whole lot of ground, just because the purse is not very big, and really, if I'm being honest, there's not a whole lot of guys here at this event that are going to be desired to be used at a whole lot of other events, right? Like Jordan Spieth, really the only other natural location for him on the rest of the schedule will be Colonial, which is coming up in a few weeks. So if you do want to use Jordan Spieth here, I don't think that that's a bad idea, but I don't think he's necessarily a guy that you have to use either. So same deal with Jason Day. I don't see a natural spot for him on the rest of the schedule, but I don't know. I don't know what to make about one and done this week. I think that this would be a week where pick the guy who you think is going to win the golf tournament, and don't worry about whether or not you have him for later in the season. Don't worry about what his ownership is going to be. Just try to find yourself a winner, because at the end of the day, that's how you're going to end up winning this one and done type of event, right? I don't really see anybody this week garnering a whole lot of ownership, just because there's no real one true favorite. There's no real guy that anybody's been saving for this event. So I think that this just kind of bombs away, pick the guy you think is going to win this event. I don't think that it's a bad spot for Tom Kim because really the Wyndham would kind of be the next logical location to play him. Definitely not playing Will Zalatoris or Sung Jae Im this week. I just think there's better course fits for the two of them. I think that Steven Yeager makes a lot of sense this week. I think that Siwoo Kim makes a lot of sense this week. I think that Adam Schenk makes a lot of sense this week, as well as, my number one model player, Tom Hoagie, and Alex Noren. I think, and Keith Mitchell also make a lot of sense this week. Like, I think this is a week where you can just go with a lot of different options, and I don't think this is a week to really like overstress it too much, right? So what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to trust my model here on the one and done that I've been picking here on the show, and I'm going to go with Tom Hoagie. All right, he came out for number one in my model for a reason. So we're just going to roll the dice and hope that he is able to put it together here at TPC Craig Ranch and give us a win, which we desperately need in one and done on this season. All right, so that does it for the 2024 CJ Cup Byron Nelson preview. If you like what you saw on YouTube, please hit the like button. It helps me out a ton. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That way you can be with us for upcoming live golf coverage, as well as the PGA Tour coverage for the rest of the year. And also, the NFL draft just happens, which means that it is best ball season coming around the corner, as well as preseason fantasy football before you know it. And then we're rolling right into college football and college basketball season. So if you're interested in any of that, subscribe to the channel. That way you can be around for all that content with us. But other than that, y'all, that pretty much does it for this week. Hopefully we got you guys covered, gave you guys plenty of good information that whether you're playing DFS, betting, or one and done this week, you were able to pick some winners based off the information that we gave you here in this episode. I definitely think we did a really good deep dive of this golf course and kind of how it poses one unique question all throughout the round, which is, can you hit your long approach shots? And whoever can answer that question with an emphatic yes this week is going to be the guy who wins the golf tournament. And so hopefully we gave you guys all you need to be able to pick that guy this week and get yourself some winning lineups or some winning bets here for the Byron Nelson. All right, so that does it for this episode, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Best of luck to you guys this week in whatever game you're playing, DFS, betting, one and done, whatever. Best of luck to you. Hopefully I was able to help you guys out a little bit. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you guys next time.